why did I decide to go to college? I went to college primarily because it was expected by my family that I would continue my education. I was the first person in my family on either side to attend college, but my parents always expected my brother and sister and I to be excellent in school, and the logical extension of that in the mid-70s, I guess, was the idea that my kids can go to college. And so it was always just kind of in the back of my head that I was going to go to college, although I didn't know why or what I was going to study or where I was going to go until really my senior year in high school. It was almost a last-minute kind of a decision there in terms of where I was going to go. In terms of inspiration, my path to college, I went to a college fair at my high school, Elmhurst High School in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which has just been closed this year. But there was a college fair, and there were representatives from all of the major public universities in the state of Indiana, as well as the private schools. And I talked with folks at the University of Evansville. And I had a really interesting conversation with those folks, and they were really showing off an opportunity for international study. They have a campus in England which is called Harlexton College outside of Grantham, England, and it's owned by the University of Evansville, and so you have the opportunity to attend school there at an in-state rate, use all of your federal financial aid. And in 1976, that sounded pretty cool. And so I quickly focused in on the University of Evansville. I was also pretty independent at that time, and so there was an ulterior motive. I actually chose Evansville because it was almost as far away from Fort Wayne, Indiana as I could be and still be in the state of Indiana, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but I really wanted to be independent at that point in my life. As far as inspiration for what I might do, it really goes back to a sociology teacher I had in my senior year at Elmhurst. Mr. Glenn Miller, not of Glenn Miller's band, but anyway, Mr. Glenn Miller was a sociology teacher, and there was something about those courses. Most of the students taking his classes didn't resonate for them, but there was something about that course that deeply interested me. In fact, it was the one course my entire senior year that kind of clicked, and so I ended up studying sociology at the University of Evansville. So it was a combination of Mr. Miller's teaching and this great opportunity to perhaps spend a semester abroad that really got me where I started. After I left the University of Evansville, and my dad indicated that it would be good for me to take a break so that I could spend a little more time thinking about what was important. I was not doing the things I needed to do in my first year in terms of taking classes seriously. I've often said that I was a sociology major that mastered the social, but wasn't doing very well at theology. And that was true. If you looked at my grades at that time, I was barely a C student. And so I worked construction for a couple of years. In Fort Wayne, Indiana, I was a gopher. I worked in a small construction company. We built a few houses, some garages, poured a lot of concrete. I seemed to be the guy that was always with the wheelbarrow taking concrete from the curb to the backyard as we poured patios. So that didn't seem like where my future needed to go. And during that time, I met a young lady who had aspirations to go to Purdue University. And she moved on to Purdue after we had been dating for some time. And so I started to look at Purdue University as my next option for higher education. So you might say that love took me to West Lafayette, Indiana, and that would be true. But I looked through the catalogs at that time and thought, well, what can I do? What do I really want to do in terms of following a degree? And the catalog there at Purdue had a natural resources and environmental sciences program in it. And that looked really interesting. It was totally different than anything I had thought about, coming from an urban high school with originally thinking about sociology. And so I thought, well, I'll try this. I'll enroll in this natural resource program. So I ended up going back to college and followed Deb there, whom I later married, by the way, and we've just celebrated our 31st anniversary. And fell in love with what I was doing. I took an introduction to soil science class that very first semester, and liked it so much that I ended up getting to know several graduate students in the program and talked with my advisor, one of the professors who teaches that course, and ended up getting a job in the department from that point forward. And that really paved the way for everything else I did throughout my academic career. When I was at Purdue, starting my second time around as an undergraduate, again, I took a course my first semester that was a unique course. It was an auto tutorial course, and that term may not mean much to today's students, but essentially we had one lecture a week, set the stage, kind of said what the topic was, and then the rest of the week was centered in a lab that was both a hands-on as well as a learning lab, and we had cassette tape carousels, which most students today wouldn't know what those are, which were also tied into television sets. And so there were slides and we had readings, and so we were listening to an instructor talk, and then it would get you to a certain point and say, now quit and go to bench A and work on this assignment. Well, in that lab we had at any time 10 to 30 students, undergraduates, and we also had usually 2 or 3 upper level PhD students, TAs, teaching assistants, and most of the time at least one professor. And it was really a unique environment because at any time there were 3 or 4 professors that were involved in this class. And so it was always this hands-on, interactive environment where undergraduates, graduates, and professors were learning together. And these professors were fabulous. They were amazing. They cared about their students. They cared about the progress that their students were making. And then as a master's student, I got recruited into doing part of the teaching assistant work in that environment. I had been working in that lab helping set it up, and then as a graduate student I was teaching in it. And so I was, for a period of years, both taking the class, working in that lab as an undergraduate, and then being a TA in that program during my master's degree, exposed to this amazing group of professors who cared deeply about both their discipline and their students. And it really made a deep impression on me. It was at that point, at the end of my master's, that I knew that I wanted to be involved in teaching. If I were a first-generation student entering the University of Kentucky, I would do a couple of things. I would, number one, seek out as many opportunities to talk with faculty as is possible. Don't be afraid to walk to the front of the classroom and engage a professor in a discussion, even if it's not about something you don't understand. Go up and introduce yourself and say, hey, you know, I'm a new student here and I'm interested in perhaps knowing why you chose chemistry or why you chose English, you know, what made you tick. Don't be afraid of forming relationships with faculty. It was the single best thing that ever happened to me as a student at Purdue University. Talk to your advisors. If you aren't sure about what's going on, talk to your advisors. Don't sit back and think, well, if I just wait long enough, this will go away. If you have an issue or a problem, there are people here who can help you with that. And so you have an assigned advisor, maybe a professional advisor, it may be a faculty advisor. In either case, use that person as a resource to help you navigate the waters. You know, it's a big place. Sometimes it can be kind of confusing. And finally, think about ways of interacting with other students who have similar interests to you. There are certainly first-generation student groups, but there are also groups that are on this campus for individual majors. So if you're a sociology major or a chemistry major or a plant and soil science major, there are student organizations in each of those areas where students can come together, and this provides you an opportunity to not only meet other freshmen, but also to meet sophomores, juniors, and seniors who are doing similar things to what you're thinking about doing, and can be a great resource for you in terms of thinking about how I want to move through this large university that is the University of Kentucky. In other words, take advantage of the relationships that you can form with other students, with your advisors, faculty or staff, and with your teaching faculty, and allow them to provide you with some information that can help you to make the right decisions.